So let's talk about a king who seemed to have it all. Power, love, glory, the whole shebang. But a single gift, one that was supposed to guarantee his happiness forever, ended up revealing a devastating truth that sent him on a journey he could never have imagined.
Just think about that for a second. What if you were given the ultimate prize, immortality, but instead of locking in your happiness, it just blew your entire world to pieces? Well, this isn't just some philosophical question. It's the very heart of the ancient legend we're diving into today.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our story begins way back in the ancient golden city of Ujjain. This was one of the great kingdoms of its time, a real center of art, knowledge, and power. And right at the heart of it all was a pretty remarkable ruler.
And this is our guy, King Bhartrihari. Now, he wasn't just any old king. He was known everywhere for being a fair and just ruler, a fierce warrior who was constantly expanding his empire, and, on top of all that, a deep thinker who loved poetry and philosophy. He was, the complete package.
But here's what's so fascinating about him. He was kind of living this double life. By day, he was the master of his empire, all about governance, justice, and conquest. But by night, he was a poet, writing these beautiful verses about love and deep philosophical takes on ethics. This was a man who could command a battlefield and a blank page with equal skill.
And at the very center of this perfect world was his queen. For him, their love wasn't just a part of his life. It was his life. He saw it as the one pure, eternal thing he could count on, and he was completely and utterly devoted to her.
And it's this very devotion that brings us to the real turning point in our story. It all starts with what seems like an incredible blessing, but it quickly turns into something way, way more complicated.
So, one day, a holy sage visits the kingdom. He's super impressed by Bhartrihari's character and how well he runs things. As a reward, he offers the king this truly miraculous gift, a divine fruit that can basically stop time, granting eternal life to whoever eats it. In a world where everything eventually fades, this is the ultimate prize.
So what does the king do? You'd think he'd eat it himself, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to live forever? But no, in what he sees as the ultimate romantic act, he gives the fruit to his queen. His reasoning? Their love was so perfect it deserved to last for all of eternity. It's a totally selfless gesture, all based on this perfect love he believes in.
But this is where the fairy tale just completely shatters. That one little fruit, the symbol of their eternal love, is about to go on a really shocking journey. And it's going to expose this hidden web of secrets and lies that's been festering right under the king's nose.
Okay, you gotta follow the path of the fruit here. The sage gives it to the king. The king, out of pure love, gives it to his queen. But the queen, she's secretly in love with the palace charioteer, so she gives the fruit to him. The charioteer, well, he's got a thing for a local courtesan, so he passes it along to her. And then, in the final unbelievable twist, the courtesan, who's actually loyal to the king, walks into court and presents the fruit right back to him. Can you just imagine that moment? The king is sitting on his throne in his own court, and he's handed the very same fruit that was supposed to represent his eternal love for his wife by another woman. The confusion, and then that slow, dawning horror as he recognizes it, the perfect circle of betrayal is complete, right there in front of everyone.
So, of course, the king investigates. He follows the fruit's trail backward, step by painful step. And when the full truth finally comes crashing down, he realizes this isn't just about infidelity. His entire reality, everything he built his life on, has just collapsed.
Think about that. The physical object came back to him, but its meaning was just gone. The trust, the love, the devotion he thought it represented, it had been passed around from person to person, revealing the absolute hollowness at the center of his perfect life.
He's completely crushed, and he turns back to his poetry, but now the verses are filled with pain and these huge existential questions. He starts to see the whole world not as this place of truth and beauty, but as a kind of illusion, just a mirage, driven by everyone's selfish, fleeting desires.
And his reaction is just absolute. He can't rule a world that he now sees as fundamentally fake. So he gives it all up, his power, his wealth, his identity as a king. He hands the crown to his younger brother, turns his back on the palace, and simply walks away.
Now you might think that's the end of the story. King loses everything and fades away. But actually, it's a new beginning. The shattering of his old life forces him onto a brand new path, one that's not about power, but about finding a much deeper kind of understanding.
He comes to embrace this really powerful philosophical concept called vairagya. Basically, it's all about renunciation, the idea that you find true inner freedom by detaching yourself from all the worldly stuff that causes so much pain: desire, attachment, ego. It becomes the answer to the very question his heartbreak forced him to ask.
And he channels all of that pain and all of his newfound clarity straight into his writing. He creates his masterpiece, the Vairagya Shataka, a collection of 100 poems not about the joys of love, but about the wisdom of letting go. His personal tragedy becomes a universal guide to philosophy.
The transformation is just stunning. I mean, it's a complete 180. The man who once wore a crown and lived in a palace now carries a simple begging bowl and lives in a cave. The king who was defined by worldly attachment becomes the sage who is defined by philosophical detachment.
And in the end, his legacy wasn't the empire he built, but the words he wrote. His 3 collections of verses on ethics, love, and finally, on renunciation have survived for over 1,500 years, influencing countless people searching for wisdom. He lost a kingdom, but he gained a legacy that's truly immortal.
So, Bhartrihari's story really forces you to look at your own life, doesn't it? His great illusion was this idea of a perfect, eternal love. He only found real freedom when that illusion shattered. And that brings us to a final question. What illusions are you holding on to? And what truth might you find if they were to break?